What the Secretary of State has done today is given a massive boost to the profits of multi-million-pound energy companies, but it will be paid for consumers through their bills. So what do the prices show us? First, wind power is not getting cheaper as promised. These are the highest prices that we've seen in a decade. Today's strike prices in a like-for-like comparison are much higher than last year. If we use the Secretary of State's own figures on the worth of the contract extension that he put forward to 20 years, they are 24% more expensive than last year. That's an enormous increase year on year, 24%. More expensive, much higher than inflation. So can he explain why building a wind farm has suddenly got so much more expensive? Well, I can. It's because the Secretary of State, by setting himself completely unrealistic targets, he advertised to multi-million-pound wind developers that he would be buying whatever they were selling, no matter the cost. He flexed all the rules, he extended their contracts. In fact, he gave the wind developers everything they wanted, and this is how they repaid him. The most expensive prices for wind power that we've seen in a decade. And he wants us to celebrate the fact that he bought a bumper round, the biggest in history, in his own words. Now let's take his key argument on levelised cost of electricity. If he had looked at or replied to any of the letters I had sent him, he would know that I did not agree with using an LCOE to compare wind power and gas power. He will know I started, he might want to listen to this because he might learn something. He will know I started a full systems cost, which he cancelled, even though I urged him to continue it. That's because the full cost of these contracts to the consumer are £95 in today's money, plus inflation, plus the extra costs that come with wind, turning them off when it's too windy, having a backup gas plant when it's not windy enough, and connecting them to the grid. So he's underplayed the true cost of wind on people's bills. And by the way, that's not just me saying how we should look at it. This is what wind developers themselves say that they should look at it. It's how Dieter Hellman, senior economists, say we should look at it. We should look at the full system's costs. Now let me turn to gas. When he talks about the comparison with a new gas power plant, he is willfully ignoring the fact that he needs to build new gas plants anyway. What does the Secretary of State think will power the country on wintry days when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow? Even his own plans acknowledge it's gas power. In his plans, he will build the same amount of gas plants anyway. He'll just run them 4% of the time. Would anyone here buy a house they use 4% of the time? Well, I guess out of all of us, the Secretary of State probably would, but here's the problem. He's having to build more and more capacity, lots of which will sit idle most of the time. That means higher costs for a less productive energy system. These are all costs the Secretary of State is choosing to ignore. But even if we use the figures he's quoting today, which underplay the cost of wind, even in his own figures, the truth is here. If you take out the carbon tax that he's choosing to impose, the cost of a gas power plant running fully is much cheaper, roughly a third cheaper, than offshore wind. It's here in black and white, page 33, if members would like to check. He's hoping that members on the benches opposite won't read what he's published today, but I hope they do, because it should be facts, not ideology, that drives the decisions we make for our energy system. People out there are at breaking point. They get up every day, they go to work, and everything they earn is being eaten up by Labour's taxes and their bills. He tried to tell me last time we were at this dispatch box that people's energy bills are going down, not up. Nobody out there believes him. Energy bills have gone up 5 times under him because of his policies, and now he is celebrating this botched wind auction, which has seen him sign up to the highest prices of wind power for a decade, prices which are close to 20% higher than the cost of electricity. The question is, how on earth can he bring bills down from here with these higher prices? That is what people were promised. This will be the PFI of the energy system long after he's gone from this place. And I warned the Secretary of State, that by setting himself completely unrealistic targets, the wind developers would have him over a barrel. And that is what has happened here. He talks about fossil fuel spikes, but he doesn't talk about the ongoing deindustrialisation of this country because of uncompetitive electricity prices, prices which he is locking us into for 2 decades. So I have 3 simple questions for him. Will he finally publish a full systems cost of Clean Power 2030? Will he confirm that he will still need to build gas power plants for dispatchable power, or if that's not his policy, what is going to keep the lights on when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine? And does he have a forecast for the constraint payments, how much he will expect to pay those wind developers to turn off when it is too windy?
Yeah.
Secretary of State.
That was a lot. As they say. Look, first of all, let me deal with what she said point by point. First of all, we're going to take no lectures from her on energy bills. She presided over the worst cost of living crisis in history. And not once, Madam Deputy Speaker, have we heard a word of apology. And I'll tell her, it's this government that is taking £150 of costs off bills. And how are we doing it? Because we're raising taxes on the wealthy. And she opposes every one of the measures that we are taking. Second, I have to say to her, I know it's painful for her, but I'm using the same metric that she endorsed in November 2023. She was there as the Energy Secretary. She published the document, and on that metric, she knows the truth that it says, which is that the offshore renewables today are 40% cheaper to build and operate than new gas. And however much she tries to struggle or flail around, that is the fact. So they are the facts, I'm afraid. And she asked about carbon pricing, by the way. It's very interesting, this. Even when you take off carbon pricing, gas is still more expensive on the figures we published today. Her sums simply don't add up. Now then she asks, and this is really rich. She asks about constraint payments. Well, I've got to say, why do we have constraint payments? I am answering the question. Why have we got constraint payments? Because they failed to build the grid when she was the Secretary of State. And get this, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now she comes along, complains about constraint payments, and opposes every piece of energy infrastructure that we try and build to actually bring down the constraint payments. I mean, it is extraordinary. But here's her big problem, Madam Deputy Speaker. Here's her big problem, is that she is making a massive gamble. And it's a gamble on fossil fuels. A gamble on fossil fuels, exactly what they did when they were in office. And we know where that led. The worst cost of living crisis in memory, leaving us at the mercy of petrostates and dictators, and leaving the British people to pay the price. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll end up by saying this. We were elected with a historic mandate to end their record of failure, and that's what we're doing. We're ending the sellout of our energy security. We're cutting bills. We're creating hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs. We're protecting future generations. Let me sum it up. She failed. We're delivering.